Would you guys like to travel through time? Because last summer I replaced the starter motor on this, we'll talk about that, 74 R90/6. I filmed the whole thing, I never cut the video until today. I guess this makes this kind of a tutorial, so a couple ground rules. Like I said, this is a 74 R90/6, but the process is largely the same for like any Airhead from, I say, 1970 on up. You just have to make sure you get the right starter motor for your bike. They changed the number of gear teeth in like 1977. Finally, this bike has been fairly heavily modified. It has a custom wiring harness, so what's under the tank is not going to resemble what's under your tank. That's largely irrelevant for the starter motor except for one wire, which I will point out when we get to it. Okay, are you guys ready to travel through time? Here we go. Look what is back in the shop today. The BMW R90 bobber is back in the shop. The starter motor is having a hard time turning the engine over. We think it's the starter motor, as it's one of the few pieces that was not replaced when we rebuilt the bike. But, it could potentially be a bad electrical connection. We do have a brand new battery in here, and it's charging right now, so we'll eliminate that as a possibility. But yeah, I'm going to get this thing stripped down, and we'll take a look at this starter, see how everything looks in there. So like a lot of things that are on an Airhead engine, the starter motor is actually pretty easy to get to. It's just under this cover here, above the engine emblems. So we're going to pull the tank and get rid of some of the stuff that's in the way here, pull that cover off. And I feel like this should go without saying, but of course, if you're going to do electrical work, disconnect that positive battery terminal, because you're going to be dealing with a lot of wiring, and you don't want to get shocked. I don't know. Maybe you do. Listen, I'm not going to judge, right? Here I'm removing the ignition coils to get them out of the way of the cover. Yours are going to look different than these, but they'll be in the same spot. Next, we're going to remove the airbox from the back of the motor, starting with these air inlet tubes, the ones that connect the airbox to the carburetors. Looks pretty clean. Not bad. Here I'm removing the choke and throttle cables from the carburetors. You don't have to do this, but it can be helpful in order to get them out of your way. I needed to service these carburetors anyway, so I took them off as well. Just know that if you do remove these cables, you will have to make sure that when they do go back on, the choke opens and closes fully and the two throttles are synchronized. This is a little tricky to see, but to remove this right-hand air filter cover, you have to remove this kind of hard to access nut right there. Just grab whatever 13 millimeter wrenches you can, because depending on what precise angle the shit is at, one of these might work better than the other. Now the starter motor cover is just held on with two Allen head bolts, and then it just flips away. Pretty easy. Yeah, it's just a little crusty and old, huh? Well, the connections are still tight, so that's not our problem. We're going to have to get at the bracket for the starter back here. So I believe that this is the original Bosch starter. Thing's pretty hefty. It's like nearly the size of a car starter. And there's a bracket on the back here. There's a bolt that holds it in place that is accessible like right under there through a hole like right here. It's going to be basically like impossible for me to film that. The deep well socket is what you want for this particular application. I've got this swivel head ratchet That comes in handy for things like this. You don't really have to worry about dropping this thing. There's not really anywhere for it to go. Underneath this cover is where the timing chain is located, but there's a wall separating this starter motor area and the timing chain. That's the culprit right there. The starter motor is held in place with 2 bolts up front. I have Allen key hardware here. Normally this would be a hex bolt. Well, that was no fun. All right. And there you have it. The starter motor's out. You can see the wiring that attaches to it over here. Future Rich here. I'm using my powers to freeze time itself. You can see we have 4 wires here. You will probably have 3. This large black cable goes from the battery to the starter solenoid post. This thin red wire goes from the starter solenoid to the charging system, and this thick red cable is part of my custom Moto Gadget setup, so you won't have this one. Finally, this thin black wire with the spade connector ties to the, you got it, spade connector on the solenoid. Basically, wire number 4 eventually leads to the starter button on your handlebar. It tells the solenoid when to send power from the battery to the starter motor. Okay, unpause. And the flywheel that it turns on this side. Everything's looking good. So these starters are rebuildable. You do not need to buy a new one. However, we live in a shiny plastic disposable world, so I bought a new one. This is an Duralast unit, and it is quite a bit lighter than the original big Bosch starter, about 4 pounds savings. Now, because of that weight savings, you don't actually need this rear bracket anymore, which is just lovely. Install is pretty much just the reverse of what you just did. Reconnect the wiring, bolt the new starter back in place. Now you're going to have to slide the starter in from the front. You can't just drop it in from above. Also, this new starter is threaded, so you don't have to worry about those annoying nuts anymore. Last thing, torque up the bolts. If you don't have a service manual, you should get one, but here's the torque spec. Alright, now we'll reconnect this battery and give this starter a try, see how it does. So obviously this bike is not going to run as is. The carburetor is missing. I've got the spark plugs out, but I just want to make sure that this is turning the engine over properly. Make sure you're in neutral. So that worked all right. If you put your thumb over the spark plug hole, you can feel the engine turning over. So I'm going to throw those plugs in and make sure the starter can turn the engine over while it doesn't have an escape path for the compression. Welcome back to the future. So all you got to do now is put back on all that stuff you took off. The starter motor replacement is actually pretty easy. It's getting to it that is a little bit tricky, perhaps. So I hope that was helpful. If you want to see more about this bike, it's been featured in probably 24 videos on this channel, including a 28-minute highlight reel showing the build process. You can click right up there. So yeah, this is now my motorcycle. I built this as a commission project for a guy about 5 years ago. He was finally ready to move on to something else, and I managed to get it for like a pretty good deal. I'm super stoked. Like I said, it's been 5 years since the build. It's had some miles put on it. There's some stuff that I would like to address on this thing. Change up a couple things here and there. And I'm looking forward to having this thing back on the channel. I'm looking forward to getting some riding footage of it this year, and some more workshop work too. So got to balance these carburetors. That's probably going to be the next thing. If that's something you'd like to watch, then you know what to do. I'm going to turn off this camera now. So just do the thing, and I'll see you.